Let's get ready to mortgage. He is the prince of programs, guru of guidelines, master of matrices. He puts the fun in funding. Please welcome Mark, Mr. Mark-eitel.
All right, my name is Mark-eitel, and you are listening to the Mr. Mortgage Show, and it is always our goal to give you the data, the tips, the tricks, the strategies, the answers to your questions so you can go out there and make better real estate and mortgage decisions for you and your family. Guys, we do this every Thursday right here at 11 a.m. on WPSL, and super excited to be with you as we wrap up 2022 and head on into 2023. And man, oh man, where did this year go? What a whirlwind, right? Especially in the world of real estate and mortgages. It's been a crazy ride in 2022. You know, we saw rates start the year in the, low threes, I guess, high twos, depending on the program, and tickled 7% and broke through 7% at the end of the summer. So, man, oh man, it has been a wild, wild ride. We appreciate you tuning in each week and spending a little bit of your day with us. And we always appreciate your questions and comments. And Jen, my producer, is in the studio with me. She is womanning the Anytime Hotline. And you can call or text that number, 855-462-7292, 855-462-7292. That is the Anytime Hotline. And again, you can call or text your questions to that number, and Jen will get you on the air. If you prefer to do it via email, just go to mrmortgageradio.com. That's mrmortgageradio.com. Scroll all the way to the bottom, and there's a little email icon. If you click that, you can send your questions to us via email. And guys, there's a ton of information on that page. We put everything right there in that one location. So there are links to the Facebook page. There are links to, more about Reverse, all of the different sponsors and advertisers that we have, as well as information about me and my mortgage practice. So that is always a great resource. And the top link takes you to the podcast. You hear me talk about it all the time. After we wrap up the show, Jen posts the recorded version of it to the podcast page as a podcast episode. So if you ever miss any of the show, or you want to hear something again, or if you want to share the show with somebody, that's a great link. Just mrmortgageradio.com, and that top link will take you to the podcast page. And we've been doing some additional bonus content, if you will. I always laugh when I say that. That makes me sound pretty self-important. But we had some requests after last week's show to deep dive some of the guidelines around FHA. And once we get through the holidays, I'm going to do that. I'm going to post some bonus FHA content there. But check out Mr. Mortgage Radio, a ton of information there, and we are always updating it. But anyway, let's dive right into this week's show. As I mentioned, we are wrapping up 2022. This is our last show of the year on WPSL, and then obviously next year we'll be in 2023. But this is the time of year where all the talking heads come out with their predictions, and there's a lot of confusion around where is the real estate market going to go. A lot of uncertainty. Is it a good time to buy? Is it a good time to sell? Where are rates going? And a lot of people, when that CPI number came out a couple weeks ago, and we talked about it last week, there was a big overreaction to what that meant. A lot of people assumed that there were going to be mortgage rate reductions as a result of the quote-unquote cooling of inflation, and that was until Chairman Powell came out and said, guys, inflation is still at unacceptable high levels, and they're going to do their best to extinguish that. And I think I used an analogy like, being on the 20th floor of a building, and now we're on the 18th floor. We're moving in the right direction, but we're still way, way up there. And that's kind of what the Federal Reserve said. That Chairman Powell basically said, we're going to keep raising rates until we get this under control. So, there was, as I mentioned, a bit of an overreaction. We saw interest rates pull back a little bit on that news, but by the end of that week, they were right back where they started. And we've had some upward pressure in the last couple of weeks in the mortgage rate environment. So the reason I'm sharing this is nobody knows for certain where rates are going to be next year, next month, next week. And what I did out of curiosity, because everybody's forecast was wildly, wildly off last year. So I pulled, and it's interesting because it's hard to find the 2022 forecast. So I went back and I pulled some data from Bankrate and from JP Morgan Chase and a lot of the go-to websites, if you will, when we're looking at economic forecasts. And on January 3rd of 2022, so almost a year ago, Bankrate published an article saying their forecast for interest rates in 2022 was rates climb to 3.7, hit a peak, and then pull back to around 3.5. I'm saying that because, guys, rates are in the 6s and 7s. If you were planning to wait or to make a move based on someone's forecast, man, oh man, I feel bad for you, because the reality is everybody was wrong going into 2022, and we're equally uncertain going into 2023. I heard a lot of people say on that CPI number that they thought rates, that meant that we've neared the end and we were going to see rates pull back into the 4s in 2023. Guys, I personally don't see that happening. And if you go back and look at some of the old YouTube videos and some of the videos that we posted at the end of last year, we didn't believe rates were going to stay in the 3s either. You know, I've been thinking somewhere between 5 and 6% was where we were going to settle when the market normalized. Now, guys, I didn't think we were going to go from 3 to 7 in just a handful of months. I'm not saying I'm Nostradamus, but I didn't believe rates were going to cap at 3.75 and then pull back. There's no reason for that to be the case, because we were coming out of all of that pandemic era financial policy. So the reason I'm sharing this is I talk to people all the time, almost daily lately. Everybody's trying to catch that falling knife, and they're saying they think that home prices are going to come down. At the same time, interest rates are going to come down, and they're trying to, brew this magic kettle of predictions. And, August of 2023, I'm going to make a move. Well, guys, if you're using these forecasts, the same people who missed the 2022 forecast are the same people that are making the 2023 forecast. What makes you think that's going to be the right move? You know what I mean? What are we waiting on? So I'm a big proponent of using today's data. Where we are right now today, there are strategies to get interest rates on 30-year fixed rate money into the low 5s. And there are more opportunities to negotiate with sellers. Now, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know where home prices go from here, although I don't believe there's a crash looming. I think we go into a stagnation period with appreciation. You've heard me say it for almost a year now. I think we go into a 4-5% appreciation, maybe 3 in some areas, maybe 8 in others, appreciation cycle for extended period of time while we let the market catch up to itself. And the reason I'm saying that is there are people out there that are making life decisions based on forecasts. Guys, use the data of today. If it makes sense today, then seriously consider doing something today. If you need to save more money, if you need to build your credit, if you're getting a raise or a new job, or you're changing careers, I get it. Then waiting is necessary as you put all of those pieces into place. But, if your lease expires in February and you're seriously considering renewing until February of 2024 because you think you're going to wait out an interest rate or housing market based on this data, I would caution you. I would caution you because we just don't know what the future holds, and last year's forecasts are proof of that. So I say all that not to poo-poo the forecasters, because guys, that's a difficult job. You got a crystal ball in one hand, a rear view mirror in the other, cat's whiskers and bat wings, and you're brewing up this magic potion and you're trying to figure out, what's going to happen. We just don't know. All we can do is make decisions based on the data that's in front of us and use that data to make the best decisions for us and our families. And guys, that's what we're here for. Each week, we try to bring you the data. We always appreciate your questions. You can call or text your questions, 855-462-7292. That's 855-462-7292. But you hear the music, you know what that means. That's my cue. We'll be back in 2. Sit tight on the other side of this break. We're going to deep dive the data and start taking your questions. Hey, it's mark-eitel, host of the Mr. Mortgage Show. You hear me all the time talking about the need to have the very best team representing you in a real estate transaction. And that starts with a really great agent. If you've got a great agent, that's awesome. But if you don't, check out www.reallyGreatAgents.com. There you'll find the best of the best, regardless of the city they work in or the brokerage they work for. www.reallyGreatAgents.com. www.reallyGreatAgents.com.
Here's another 5-star review.
We started our loan with a different company. They said we were approved, but at the last minute they told us there was a problem. I still don't know what went wrong, but thankfully our real estate agent told us about Mark. I was pretty stressed, but it's the perfect house, so we gave Mark a shot. He got it done. I'm not sure what was different, but I don't really care. We even got a better interest rate and with less money out of pocket than the first guy quoted us. It was a great surprise. Yes, I'm happy to recommend Mark and his Mr. Mortgage team.
Paradise is closer than you think. West Building Contractors can help you create your perfect piece of paradise. They have mastered the art of pavers, hardscapes, summer kitchens, pools, and more. For a free design consultation and quote, visit westbuildingcontractors.com or call 772-284-6994. West Building Contractors offer new construction, luxury additions, and remodels too. That's 772-284-6994 or westbuildingcontractors.com.
Are inflation and everyday expenses eating into your retirement income? Maybe you've considered a reverse mortgage and have unanswered questions like, do I still own my property? Can the bank kick me out? What happens when I die? Can I still leave my house to my kids? These are all great questions. Visit www.moreaboutreverse.com to learn more. That's www.moreaboutreverse.com. www.moreaboutreverse.com.
Welcome back to the Mr. Mortgage Show. Call us now at 855-462-7292.
All right, we are back. My name is mark-eitel, and you are listening to the Mr. Mortgage Show. And guys, we appreciate you spending a little bit of your Thursday with us right here on WPSL. You heard me mention Jen, my producer, as she is standing by waiting for your questions at 855-462-7292. You can call or text that number, but I forgot to check in with her. Hey, Jen, good morning.
Good morning, Mark.
How was your week so far?
Feels like we're in for a really great show today.
Yeah, it does feel like that, right? We've wound down another year. We're kind of moving into 2023 here at a rapid pace. And yeah, man, super excited to be with everybody. Jen, thank you for being with us. And if you guys didn't know how awesome Jen is, I do want to give you a shout out, okay? Am I all right to do that?
Oh,
I know. All right, so if you didn't catch yesterday's front page of the Stewart News, TC Palm, Jen and her group of ladies who all ride their own Harley Davidsons were featured for all the good deeds that they do throughout the year. They all dress in costume during Halloween and go give out candy. They went to the Ark this year and some assisted living facilities. And then a couple weekends ago, they dressed as Santa's helpers and Frosty the Snowman and sexy little elves, and they're all riding, all these women on their Harley Davidsons all grouped together in costume and rolled into the assisted living and handed out gifts, sang carols. Man, oh man, I was blessed to be there. I was trailing behind everybody in the Mr. Mortgage Mobile full of gifts. And man, thanks for letting me be a part of that. But I was super excited to see the ladies get featured on the front page of the paper. So if you guys missed that, check out MrMortgageRadio.com and click on the Facebook page link. And I'm going to post that article there because you guys do some amazing stuff, and I was super excited to see you recognized. I know. She's waving me off, asking me to stop. But anyway, I just wanted to give a shout out. You know, it's just, we love being part of our community in any way that we can, and Jen takes it to the next level. The ladies that are a part of her organization are all super awesome. So I just wanted to throw that out there real quick. But hey, guys, back to the data for a minute. You know, we're still seeing appreciation, albeit slower, And housing sales numbers have come down considerably. And we talked about that, right? You know, if you own a property now with a ton of equity and a super low interest rate, you're probably not too excited about selling your house and paying a much higher price for, you know, essentially the same house and now twice the interest. So because of all that, we're seeing, and of course, interest rates are cooling demand a bit. We're seeing everything slow down kind of equally right now. Fewer sellers in the market, but also fewer buyers in the market. So we haven't seen that supply and demand scale tip yet. We still see what's historically considered a seller's market. Now, we're not seeing, 20 people standing out in front of open houses with bags of cash. That has definitely gone the way of the mask in public and the social distancing and all of that stuff, right? That was a COVID era fluke, if you will. We're not seeing that, but we are still seeing what's historically a healthy supply and demand equation. So I'm saying that because we're not seeing the markers line up for this crash that everybody thinks is coming, because a lot of people could just sit tight right where they are. They don't have to sell unless, of course, they move or someone dies or divorce. There's always that percentage of the population. But what happened during the pandemic were a lot of people were newly motivated, if you will, to move based on wanting to flee the COVID restrictions of their area or take advantage of that historically affordable money. And they've made those moves, right? A big percentage of the population already moved, already bought, and they've got this super low interest rate and they're in a house that they're comfortable with. So I'm saying all that because until we see more supply come to the market, we don't see where that oversupply is going to come from to push demand down. Now, guys, if interest rates keep on going up and we hit the 10s, that could do it. We could see demand dry up to nothing. And then, yes, by default, we're oversupplied. But right now where rates are, we're kind of evening out, and we're still slightly in a seller's market in a lot of areas. Now, we're watching it carefully. We're watching rent prices. We're watching unemployment, and we're watching the housing data every week. We're doing our very best to stay on top of it for you. But right now, it's not a scary time to buy. I don't think, if you can afford it, right? Don't put yourself in a position where you can't make that payment. And I think because you're still seeing predominantly fixed rate mortgages and not the risky, scary loans that we saw in the early 2000s, that's another reason why I feel pretty good about the health of the market. Yes, affordability is a problem. And yes, if you're on the outside looking in and you haven't been able to make a purchase, it's getting harder every time interest rates tick up. I get that. But affordability is only a problem for the people who haven't been able to get in the market yet, that first-time buyer, which my heart bleeds for because I'm a big proponent of the first-time buyer. But if you own your house and you're sitting on a low interest rate and a ton of equity, affordability is not a problem for you. And I think we need to keep all of that in perspective. But anyway, I'm going to dive right into your questions, and we can deep dive any of that. If you have questions around any of the topics I covered, go ahead and call or text 855-462-7292. But Jen is signaling me that we've got some questions in the queue. So I'm going to throw it over to you, Jen. What do we have?
Ashley is asking, I'm a traveling nurse. Some of my income is a housing stipend. I'm being told my housing stipend doesn't count. Does this sound right?
Hey, Ashley, that is a brilliant question. And I know it gets super confusing even from the underwriter standpoint, because there's not a hard and fast rule in the guidelines about the housing stipend, because typically that's like per diem, right? That's reimbursement of expenses, and it's not classed as income. So most of the time they're not using it as income. If I'm understanding your question correctly, that's the circumstance that you're up against, is that they're not counting that as income. So it's an interesting scenario. I know that with the traveling nurse, there's variable hours and each contract pays different. For example, if you take a contract in California, your housing stipend is increased, your hourly wage is increased. The traveling nurse income calculation is tricky. I would recommend that you make sure whoever you're speaking with on the mortgage side has a full and firm grasp of how to calculate that income, and then dig into that that housing stipend, because here's the thing. If that housing stipend goes away, if you buy a house here, then in my past experience, I've had underwriters refuse to count it because it's not going to carry forward if you're an owner in this area. You haven't traveled to the area, you're not in a hotel. And I know traveling nurses get super creative, and you'll all share a house together and pocket a lot of that housing stipend. So it is adding to your bottom line. But that's a great question. It's a tricky one. I would love to take a look at it for you. If you're open to that, just give us a call, 855-462-7292, and we can set up a time. I'll let one of my team members who specialize in traveling nurse and self-employment income do an analysis for you and see exactly how much of that you can use. But brilliant question. So I appreciate that. And we're seeing a lot of traveling nurse buyers, and I don't know if that became popular. If you're a traveling nurse, please share this with me. Was that always available to you? Was traveling as a nurse always available to you as a career, or was that a COVID thing? Were there nurses who were needed in other areas so that became popular? Because I got involved in the mortgage industry first all the way back in 1999, and the traveling nurse thing seems predominant now, and I'm wondering how much of that has to do with COVID. So if you're willing to share that with me, I would love to know if that was always available to you, or if it became something that is newly predominant because of the COVID era and the need for nurses in one location over the other. So anyway, brilliant question. I appreciate you participating. But you hear the music, you know what that means. That's my cue. We're going to take a short break. Sit tight. In 2 minutes, we'll be back with more of the data and, more importantly, more of your questions. And if you have questions, you can always call or text 855-462-7292. That is the Anytime Hotline. 855-462-7292. Sit tight. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Hey, it's Mark Eitel, host of the Mr. Mortgage Show. You hear me all the time talking about the need to have the very best team representing you in a real estate transaction. And that starts with a really great agent. If you've got a great agent, that's awesome. But if you don't, check out www.reallyGreatAgents.com. There you'll find the best of the best, regardless of the city they work in or the brokerage they work for. www.reallyGreatAgents.com, www.reallyGreatAgents.com.
Here's another 5-star review.
We kept our business above water with credit cards during the pandemic. I'm glad we did. Business is better than ever. But I didn't want to be a slave to those credit card payments. I called Mark about the rec loan he advertises. Long story short, we did a rec refinance and paid off everything, even the car. Now we only have the mortgage payment. We're saving a bunch every month. Yes, we are happy to recommend Mark and the Mr. Mortgage team.
Paradise is closer than you think. West Building Contractors can help you create your perfect piece of paradise. They have mastered the art of pavers, hardscapes, summer kitchens, pools, and more. For a free design consultation and quote, visit westbuildingcontractors.com or call 772-284-6994. West Building Contractors offer new construction, luxury additions, and remodels too. That's 772-284-6994 or westbuildingcontractors.com.
Are inflation and everyday expenses eating into your retirement income? Maybe you've considered a reverse mortgage and have unanswered questions like, do I still own my property? Can the bank kick me out? What happens when I die? Can I still leave my house to my kids? These are all great questions. Visit www.moreaboutreverse.com to learn more. That's www.moreaboutreverse.com. www.moreaboutreverse.com.
Welcome back to the Mr. Mortgage Show. Call us now at 855-462-7292.
All right, we are back. My name is Mark Eitel, and you are tuned in to the Mr. Mortgage Show. Guys, we appreciate you spending a little bit of your Thursday with us. Man, oh man, this has been a blast this year. I can't believe the year is over. Wow, that was a wild ride. But guys, your questions, your participation is my favorite part of the show. So if you've got questions or comments, call or text 855 855-462-7292. That's 855-462-7292. Or you can send us an email, and you can do that by visiting mrmortgageradio.com. That's mrmortgageradio.com. Scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, and there is a little email icon. Hit that icon, and you'll be able to send your email to us, and Jen will read it on the air. But call or text 855-462-7292. And that was an interesting question we had before the break regarding traveling nurses and the income calculation, more specifically the housing stipend. And that's an interesting one. As I mentioned, we're seeing more and more traveling nurse applicants in our area, and I'm super curious to know if that's a fairly recent opportunity for nurses. So please share that with me if you are a nurse, because I'm super curious to learn more about that. But anyway, let's keep your questions coming. Hey, Jen, what do we have?
Jackie sent this one in. We want to keep our current house and rent it out when we buy our new house. I remember you mentioning there is a calculation for what we'll need to charge for rent. Can you explain that again? Thanks.
Hey, that's a great question. That was Jack. Okay. So brilliant question. And yes, you did hear that correctly. If you are keeping your house, it's called your departing residence, right? Because you're leaving that residence and you're going to keep it to rent. And you want what's called an income offset, because let's say, for example, and again, I like to use round numbers, and I know none of this exists in our market. You know, I say all the time, the only place you're going to find this house is in Fantasyland. But let's say your mortgage payment, your principal, your interest, your taxes, your insurance, everything is $750. You would need to charge $1,000 a month for that to be considered even. So if there is a mortgage payment that is on your credit report, principal, interest, taxes, insurance of $750, and association, if there's an association, you have to throw that in there also. But let's just say there's no association. You would need to have rental income of $1,000 for that to be considered zero debt obligation on your side. 75% of the rent can be used as income to offset the debt payments on the house. If you are able to charge $1,500 a month, then you're going to take 75% of the $1,500 and you're going to subtract the $750, and then that difference is income, which could help you qualify for the new house. So to answer your question, the calculation that you're referring to is 75%. Typically, if you're going to keep your primary residence and rent it out as an income-producing property and then go buy another primary, the underwriter is going to allow you to count 75% of that rental amount, that monthly income, against your debt ratio. So I hope that helps. There's always circumstances where that's different, and there's always that needle in a haystack scenario, but that's kind of a safe rule of thumb. And if you need more information about that, or you want to deep dive it, or there's more specifics, I welcome the opportunity to talk with you about that further. But brilliant question, and a great opportunity for a lot of people, because we talked about it in the opening segment of the show. If you're sitting on a bunch of equity and a super low interest rate, man, you could hold on to that property, let that equity sit there, maybe cash some of it out if you needed it, but more importantly, put somebody in there that's going to pay the bills and throw off some positive cash flow, and let that property continue to appreciate. Let somebody else pay for it for you, because man, if you're sitting on a 2 or 3% interest rate, you're never going to buy a rental property with an interest rate that low. So that low interest rate will allow you to throw off a nice positive cash flow in most circumstances. And then if you just take that positive cash and pay that down, your mortgage, you're going to accelerate the repayment of that. So brilliant strategy. And if you need more information about that, or you'd like a conversation regarding any of the specifics, just give us a shout, 855-462-7292. Hey, Jen, do you have another question ready? Okay.
Joseph wants to know, how does buying a lower interest rate work? Is it a one-time fee?
Hey, Joseph, that is another great question. You hear me talk about it all the time right now, especially with sellers being willing to negotiate again, that oftentimes instead of paying less for the property, you can get the seller to contribute to an interest rate buy down or closing costs or whatever you need the money for. But to answer your question, with a permanent rate buy down, which is, what I strongly advocate for, versus the 3-2-1 buy down, which there are advantages to that also. You pay that fee up front one time with the permanent rate buy down. So let's say you're quoted an interest rate of, I'm just going to pick something out of the air. This could or could not be the rate of the day. That doesn't matter. But let's say it's a rate of 6.5%. And the seller is going to contribute enough money to buy that down to 5.5%. That fee is paid one time in the form of discount points. You'll hear it referred to, goes to the lender, and they lower that rate to 5.5%. And that's where the rate starts and stays in the case of a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. So to answer your question, it's typically paid as a closing cost, right? Discount points. And it's paid one time at closing, and then you benefit from the lower rate for the life of the loan. So, Joseph, great question. I hope that helps. And as always, guys, if this sparked more questions for any of you and you want to deep dive it, we are always here for you. You can email us by going to mrmortgageradio.com, scroll all the way to the bottom, shoot us an email. We'll jump on the phone, or call 855-462-7292. That's the Anytime hotline. And when we're not in the studio, that pushes to my office. So 855-462-7292. But Jen, let's see if we can get another question on the air.
Here's a text from Paul. Is there any penalty for paying off a reverse mortgage? I mean, what if we decide to sell later and downsize? Thanks. We love your show.
Hey, Paul, thanks for that, brother. Brilliant question. And we get that a lot. So a reverse mortgage has no prepayment penalty. You can take a reverse mortgage and at any time in the future decide that you're ready to downsize or you want to move closer to the kids. You could sell that property. I mean, you could even refinance the property. We saw a little bit of that recently as values have increased so much, and now there's another big pot of equity. People were even refinancing reverse mortgages to kind of pull a little more equity out. But to answer your question, there is no penalty for prepayment. There's no penalty to sell the property. You want to have that discussion up front, though. If you've got a short window before you sell the property, it may not make sense to take the reverse mortgage because there is some upfront costs that take a little bit of time for it to recoup. So you need to consider that. Is your window 5 years out, 7 years out, 10 years out, or is it 2 years out? Because that could change what strategy you want to employ to get through the next 2 years. Maybe an equity line is the better way to go. But I'm always open to discussion about that. 855-462-7292 is the Anytime hotline. But brilliant question. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of misconceptions about reverse mortgages, and prepayment penalties are one of them. And there is no prepayment penalty with a reverse mortgage. You just want to make sure that your strategy keeps you in the property long enough to recoup those front end costs. And one thing to consider, there was a question a minute ago about keeping that primary residence and renting it out. You can't do that with a reverse mortgage. The reverse mortgage has to be on your primary. So you couldn't keep it in place and then go buy a new primary to downsize and then use this as an income producing property. That would be amazing. And I understand the desire to do it, but the reverse mortgage has to be on your primary residence. Now, interestingly enough, if you are creative and you're curious to know, could you have a reverse mortgage on an income producing property? You could. If you bought or owned a duplex or a triplex or a quad, you could live in one unit and rent the other 3 units or 2 units out and have a reverse mortgage on the property as your primary. That's an interesting strategy. You can also use a reverse mortgage to purchase a property and then never have a monthly mortgage payment after you buy it. So if any of that is appealing, check out moreaboutreverse.com. That's moreaboutreverse.com. There's a place there where you can request more information. But that was a great question. I appreciate that. I always enjoy talking about reverse mortgages because, man, for the fixed income senior that's getting slapped around by this inflation, it's a great opportunity. So anyway, you hear the music, you know what that means. That is my cue. We'll be back in 2. Sit tight for 2 minutes. On the other side of this break, we'll be back with more of the show. Hey, it's Mark-eitel, host of the Mr. Mortgage Show. You hear me all the time talking about the need to have the very best team representing you in a real estate transaction, and that starts with a really great agent. If you've got a great agent, that's awesome, but if you don't, check out www.reallyGreatAgents.com. There you'll find the best of the best, regardless of the city they work in or the brokerage they work for. www.reallyGreatAgents.com, www.reallyGreatAgents.com.
Here's another 5-star review.
As a realtor, I have a bunch of mortgage brokers to choose from, but I prefer to work with Mark and his Mr. Mortgage team. In this crazy market, there is no room for error, especially on the mortgage side. Mark's team moves fast, keeps everybody in the loop, and makes things happen. They always give my clients a great deal and take the time to walk them through every step of the process. When you're considering a lender, I encourage you to talk to mark-eitel and the Mr. Mortgage team.
Paradise is closer than you think. West Building Contractors can help you create your perfect piece of paradise. They have mastered the art of pavers, hardscapes, summer kitchens, pools, and more. For a free design consultation and quote, visit westbuildingcontractors.com or call 772-284-6994. West Building Contractors offer new construction, luxury additions, and remodels too. That's 772-284-6994 or westbuildingcontractors.com.
Are inflation and everyday expenses eating into your retirement income? Maybe you've considered a reverse mortgage and have unanswered questions like, do I still own my property? Can the bank kick me out? What happens when I die? Can I still leave my house to my kids? These are all great questions. Visit www.moreaboutreverse.com to learn more. That's www.moreaboutreverse.com. www.moreaboutreverse.com.
Welcome back to the Mr. Mortgage Show. Call us now at 855-462-7292.
All right, we are back. My name is mark-eitel, and you are tuned into the Mr. Mortgage Show. And if you haven't heard me say it before, thank you. I'm super excited that you choose to spend a little bit of your day with us. We always appreciate your questions, your participation, your emails. Some of them we can't even read on the air. But yeah, we always appreciate the interaction. If you've got questions or comments, you can call or text 855-462-7292. That's 855-462-7292. We are steamrolling this last show of 2022. You guys have brought some great questions so far. If you've missed any of the show, you can always check out the replay at mrmortgageradio.com. That's mrmortgageradio.com. Just click on the top link. It'll take you to the podcast page, and there, after we get off the air, Jen posts the recorded versions of the show. And guys, we're on the air in several cities throughout the country, so not everybody hears the PSL show, but you can hear some of the other shows by checking out mrmortgageradio.com. So I sang some Christmas carols last week, even though Jen was discouraging that. So if you missed that, you want to hear me sing the hits of Christmas, check out mrmortgageradio.com. But speaking of Jen and your questions, let's throw it over to her for another one. Jen, what do we have?
David is asking, everyone is saying rates are coming down next year. If that is the case, wouldn't it make more sense to pay a lower price than ask the seller to buy down the interest rate? The rate buy down makes sense, but I'm just wondering if a lower price now and a refinance later makes more sense.
Well, that is an interesting question, brother. Here's the thing. We don't know where interest rates are going to be next year, and that's kind of how I opened the show, right? I didn't mean to sound like I was poking fun at the predictions of last year, but we saw how wildly incorrect they were. You know, last year, this time, people were predicting interest rates in 2022, which, you know, now depending on the program are anywhere between 6 and 7%, that they were going to spike at 3.75 and then pull back closer to 3, right? So we saw how incorrect that prediction was. So you're reading all these headlines and you're seeing the talking heads and the data crunchers come out with their predictions for 2023. What happens if rates keep going up? You know what I mean? Where do we go? Where do we go from here? There's still a lot of uncertainty in the market. The Fed's not done hiking rates. We're likely headed into a recession. You know, how deep and how long that lasts is arguable. We don't know the answer to that. But another thing to consider is if that, you hear people say it all the time, and I hate this saying, but it's made its rounds on social media, marry the house, date the rate, right? And the idea is when rates go back down, you can refinance. But I tell those people, what happens if rates don't go back down? So let's play this out, right? In today's numbers, the situation that's in front of us, you brought up a very, very great question. Doesn't it make sense to pay a lower price for the house and deal with the interest rate later? So let's say the house is $400,000, and let's say the seller will take $385,000, right? Let's be aggressive. They're going to take a $15,000 haircut because they're going to lower the price for you. So you're going to pay $385,000 and put whatever down, and then finance the property at rate of the day. Let's just say 6.5. I have no idea if that's your rate. I don't know if you qualify. I'm just throwing numbers out, round numbers for conversational sake. So to use that same scenario, you're going to buy a property for $385,000, and you're going to finance whatever balance at 6.5% versus paying $400,000. And let's say you put 10% down, right? So you're going to put $38,500 down on that first scenario, or $40,000 down on the full price offer with them buying the rate down for you. So the difference is, what is that? $1,500 in the down payment. But lowering the interest rate 1 full percentage point down to 5.5% can save considerable money each month. And if rates keep going up from here, or even if they plateau and they stay at 6.5% for the foreseeable future, you're ahead of the game because you have 5.5%. So I get what you're saying. And one other thing to consider is refinancing is not free. There's another set of closing costs associated with that. So I'm not saying that they're going to eat up that entire $15,000 that you would have saved, right? $400 to $385, but it's going to eat up a chunk of it. So what's the net savings at the end of the day with that strategy? Not to mention all of the uncertainties surrounding that strategy. So for me, I'm conservative. I've been doing this for a long time. I saw what the housing crash did to people who were speculators, who were, out there rolling the dice and whipsawing in and out of properties. And it wasn't a pleasant experience. So for me, if I could get 5.5% today and never look back, yeah, maybe I paid $15,000 more than I had to, but the seller essentially gave that back to me and I used it to buy the rate down. So really, did I pay more? I financed a little bit more. I don't know. To answer your question, I err on the side of caution, and I err on the side of being a bit more conservative. So I would use the data that's in front of me, the price that's in front of me, the rate that's in front of me, and I would make that work to my advantage because we really have no idea where we're going from here. We could easily be at 10% as we are at 5%. There's a great argument for both of those moves in the interest rate environment. And a lot's going to have to do with the early financial data that comes out in January and February to see what the Fed does and if the housing market trails into that, that current of interest rates. But right now, today, we're still seeing upward pressure on rates. So brilliant question. I'd love to have a cup of coffee with you and deep dive it because I can just tell by the way you're thinking that you've put a lot of thought into the strategy. So I'd welcome the opportunity to talk with you more about it. But I'm of the mind, grab the lower rate today and don't look back. But that's just me. But brilliant question. Thank you for that, my man. Hey, Jen, do we have another question?
Jacqueline is asking, what are the pros and cons of an equity line versus a refinance for a renovation project and maybe paying off a few credit cards?
Wow, that's another great question. You guys are putting me to the test today, right? The last question about, refinancing later and all of that uncertainty scares the heck out of me. This is kind of along those same lines, right? Because the equity line interest rate moves every time the Fed moves the overnight rate, which controls prime, which is factored into equity lines. So, that's another interesting question. I guess I would need to know a lot more, like, for example, what your current interest rate is on your mortgage, how much you actually need to borrow for this renovation and for the credit card payments, because now you've brought a new factor into the equation, because if you pay off your credit cards, how much are you saving each month? So if you were to do a cash out refinance and roll all of that into a low fixed rate mortgage. Now, even at 6.5%, that's a low interest rate, right? Especially compared to 24% credit cards. So where does the payment work out to be? Cashing out the money necessary for the renovation and paying off the credit cards versus what interest rate you have now is really what you need to look at. The equity line's easy. There are very, very low fees associated with the equity line, and most of them have an interest-only period for up to 10 years. So there's low debt service. So if you're disciplined, that's a great strategy where you could do the renovation, knock the credit cards out, and then just throw as much money at paying down that equity line as you can. So that money is on the street for as short a period as possible. And then you've reduced the interest cost in carrying that debt. So those would be what I would look at, is how quickly could you pay that debt off if you use the equity line. And then I would also look at, if I was to do a cash out refinance and pay off the credit cards, what is my overall monthly expense? Did I lower my overall monthly expense and get the renovation out of the deal and never have to worry about where rates go from here? That's the part of the refinance that becomes attractive. The interest on the money that you use is more attractive if you take the equity line and pay it down quickly. So brilliant question. Again, I would welcome the opportunity to have a deeper discussion about that, because there's a lot of moving parts that I would need to dig into, mainly the credit card debt and the credit card payments, and factor all that in and do what's called a blended interest rate analysis. And I'm happy to do that for you. But you hear the music, you know what that means. That's my cue. We'll be back in 2. Sit tight. On the other side of this break, we'll be back with more of the show. Hey, it's mark-eitel, host of the Mr. Mortgage Show. You hear me all the time talking about the need to have the very best team representing you in a real estate transaction. And that starts with a really great agent. If you've got a great agent, that's awesome. But if you don't, check out www.reallyGreatAgents.com. There you'll find the best of the best, regardless of the city they work in or the brokerage they work for. www.reallyGreatAgents.com. www.reallyGreatAgents.com.
Here's another 5-star review.
My wife and I own a small business. And the way our accountant file our taxes, we don't show much income on tax returns. Because of this, it looks as if we don't make the money. This was a problem for our bank when we applied for a mortgage. But not for Mark. He verifies our income by using our monthly bank statements. Mark and his Mr. Mortgage team made a big difference for me. Yes, I am happy to recommend Mr. Mortgage Mark.
Paradise is closer than you think. West Building Contractors can help you create your perfect piece of paradise. They have mastered the art of pavers, hardscapes, summer kitchens, pools, and more. For a free design consultation and quote, visit westbuildingcontractors.com or call 772-284-6994. West Building Contractors offer new construction, luxury additions, and remodels too. That's 772-284-6994 or westbuildingcontractors.com.
Are inflation and everyday expenses eating into your retirement income? Maybe you've considered a reverse mortgage and have unanswered questions like, do I still own my property? Can the bank kick me out? What happens when I die? Can I still leave my house to my kids? These are all great questions. Visit www.moreaboutreverse.com to learn more. That's www.moreaboutreverse.com. www.moreaboutreverse.com.
Welcome back to the Mr. Mortgage Show. Call us now at 855-462-7292.
All right, we are back. My name is mark-eitel, and you are listening to the Mr. Mortgage Show. And guys, we appreciate your time. We really do. It's been an amazing year. I can't believe it's over. Wow, let's bring on 2023, but not before we have one more amazing weekend in 2022, right? I almost forgot what year it was. But yeah, we certainly appreciate your time. We appreciate your questions. We appreciate your comments, your emails, and you can call or text 855-462 7292 with questions or comments, 855-462-7292. And guys, when we're not on the air, that number pushes to a question line at my office. So if you need us, you can always use that number, 855-462-7292. You can get us anytime with that. That's why we call it the Anytime Hotline. Or you can check out MrMortgageRadio.com and always shoot us an email. And there's a ton of good stuff on there. The podcast page, all of the previous recorded versions of the radio show, the Facebook page where we put all that data. And I'm going to put that article that I mentioned that featured Jen and her ladies and all the good that they did this holiday season, riding their Harleys all over St. Lucie and Martin County. Man, that was quite a sight to be seen. So check out MrMortgageRadio.com, click on the Facebook page link, and that'll be up there. But hey, I'm going to throw it over to Jen, and let's keep your questions going. I think we've got a couple more. What do we have over there, Jen?
Courtney sent this text. My divorce has been final for a little over 3 years, but my previous mortgage is still on my credit report. My ex pays it. Can I get a mortgage on a new home for myself?
Hey, that's a great question. So that happens a lot, right? Now, the good news is your ex is paying it. Hopefully it's been paid on time for the full 3-year period. But you'll want your settlement agreement, your divorce decree, if it's showing that he's responsible for paying it. And hopefully you guys are on good terms, because we're going to have to show that he's been making that payment for that not to affect your debt to income ratio. And guys, I always encourage people, if you're getting divorced, don't leave the debt in both your names, because God forbid in this circumstance, Courtney's husband wasn't paying the mortgage on time. It would negatively impact her credit and prevent her from moving on with her life. So in this case, if he's paying it on time, and he's willing to prove with his bank statements, canceled checks, however he can prove that he's been making that payment, and the divorce decree clearly states he's responsible for it, then yes, you can move forward, and that won't count against you on your debt to income ratio. But in a scenario where none of that, you couldn't prove it, or he had been making the payment late, that would negatively impact you. So we see it all the time. One person will keep the house. They'll say, we got a great mortgage, we got a great interest rate, I don't want to refi. Or one party may not have been working, so they don't have the work history to qualify for a mortgage and refinance it into their name, and they leave it in both their names. We see it a lot, but that is a risk that you run with that. So I just want to throw that out there. If you're in the middle of a divorce, or you're starting to plan that process, just know that it's always ideal that if one person's keeping the house, that you're not both keeping the debt. But in this case, as long as it's been paid on time, and you can prove that he's been paying it, then you'll be in good shape. So hopefully that helps. If you have more questions, as always, you can call or text 855-462-7292, and I'll be happy to jump on the phone with you and have a deeper dive regarding that. But another brilliant question. You guys have brought some amazing questions this week. We covered a lot of topics, right? And that was another good one. These are all real world scenarios that we're seeing, right? Equity line to do renovations and pay off debt versus a cash out refi. Recently divorced. How do I get a property in my own name? This is all great stuff. Prepaying a reverse mortgage. Is there any penalty? A lot of great questions this week. If you missed any of the show, you can always catch the replay at MrMortgageRadio.com. But you hear the music, you know what that means? We are wrapping up the final show of 2022. Man, where did the time go? Where did the year go? It's been amazing. We are super happy to be part of the WPSL family. We've been here serving our community for a long time, and we're happy now to be on the air. If you guys need us during the week, you can always reach us at 855-462-7292, 855-462-7292, or check out MrMortgageRadio.com. That's MrMortgageRadio.com. We are about to leave. I know it's a long weekend for Jen. Hey, Jen, happy weekend.
Happy weekend.
Happy weekend indeed. You guys have an amazing week. We will be back next week to kick off 2023 with you right here. Same time, same station. Until then, if you need us, you know how to reach us.
That's a wrap. Join Mark-eitel next week for more thrilling, edge-of-your-seat discussions about real estate and mortgages right here on The Mr. Mortgage Show.
So you think interest rates have gotten too high to refi? Well, not so fast. There are several reasons people refinance. One is to lower their rate, that's for sure. But there are many other reasons. Debt consolidation, unexpected medical bills, home renovation. I even know of one guy who refinanced his house so he could buy his mistress a condo. But let's get back to debt consolidation for a minute. I'm working with a client now. His name is Ben. He's in Palm City. And Ben is going to refinance, pull some cash out, pay off 2 truck payments, as well as a host of credit cards. He's going to use a loan program called the REC-refi to reduce, eliminate, and consolidate his debt. So yes, his mortgage interest rate is going to go up a bit, but he's going to reduce his monthly expenses significantly. So if you'd like to learn more, you can find us online at Mr. Mortgage Radio. That's MrMortgageRadio.com.